Yeah, England by the end of the day were, if I'm to be totally honest, looked ready for home.
Ed, I think the conversation is now over about whether he wants to stay at the top of the order or not.
Since that second innings in Perth, they really haven't known what's hit them.
How much do you think spin is going to play a role? Runs were the order of the day here at the SCG, and the Australian team certainly delivered. Centuries for Travis Head and Steve Smith, sending this crowd home happy on what is a momentous day. Always, each year here at the Sydney Test on Jane McGrado. Sam Jordan from 9 News, joined by Dan Bredig from The Age. Dan, was saying yesterday that it felt like the most proper day of Test cricket that we've had over the course of the summer. 5 wickets, about 250 odd runs. This is more like the cricket we're used to.
Yeah, it's been played at a much more sedate pace and sort of a slow kind of strangulation of England, basically. Australia really needed to be ruthless today, to go past England's first innings total, which wasn't terrible, but wasn't the sort of score that they could have got if they'd played fully to their potential. Harry Brook in particular, I'm looking at you. But in terms of the way that the day played out, it was influenced, I think, a lot by the fact that, as you know, is the case for both sides, there's no spinner. So once the attempts with the new ball failed to get the outside edge and or get the bold dismissal or the LBW dismissal, it becomes about fielders on the boundary, short stuff, and Travis Head early on, and then Steve Smith through the balance of the day. They played that beautifully. They knew what was coming and they just dealt with it. And England by the end of the day were, if I'm to be totally honest, looked ready for home.
Yeah, it certainly did look that way, and it did look the way that they started as well. Travis Head, 91 not out, he resumed at the crease. There was a real sense of anticipation inside the Sydney cricket ground, and he certainly delivered as well. His first century here at the SCG, he has now ticked off 100 at each of Australia's Test venues that they are still playing at, and he really soaked it up from there. It was potentially going to be a short-lived time out in the middle when he was dropped on the rope, of course, by Will Jacks. That might have got one of the biggest cheers of the day from the Australian crowd. Certainly the Australian supporters there. It was right next to the Barmy Army as well. But Head, I think the conversation is now over about whether he wants to stay at the top of the order or not. I guess that decision will be his.
Yeah, well, he's actually only 24 runs away, I think it is, from the most runs ever by an Australian opener in an Ashes series in Australia. So that tells you something about the impact that he's had. And the fact that every time England have come out with the new ball, he's been the disruptor. Australia have scored quickly at the top of the order. That has then flowed down into the rest of the order. I think the fact that Australia have had a fast-scoring opening combination has had an effect in particular on how Marnus Labuschagne scores. He hasn't made big scores, but he's scored quickly. He's kept moving the game along. And I think that has helped Australia over the course of the series because England weren't expecting that. They're expecting that when they face up to Australia's top order, that they get some time to settle. They know that they don't have as experienced a bowling attack as they had in 2023, given Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson have retired. And so they, since that second innings in Perth, they really haven't known what's hit them, and they've never really, obviously you take out Melbourne given the extremes of the conditions there, they've never really been able to settle into a rhythm, and Travis Head hasn't allowed them to. Yeah,
that's right. Steve Smith, it wasn't quite fluid from Steve when he got out in the middle today. He took a little while to get going, but once he did, it's nice to watch him bat, and in front of an adoring crowd as well here in Sydney. His 5th Test century at the ground. That is now equal with Melbourne for the most centuries at the one venue.
Yeah, well, it wasn't the most fluent of all Steve Smith's innings, and I think that was partly to do with, as I said, the fields that were set, the approaches of the bowlers, but at the same time he was so relentless, so ruthless, and it's an interesting thing to reflect on what he talked about before the Test match in terms of what's his role now with this team, and it's to teach the younger players what Test cricket's all about. And today that was a really good example. It's like we're ahead in the game. We've got England on the run, but we need to drive that advantage home, and that to me that was what Steve Smith's innings was about today. And being able to establish partnerships through the day with various players. There would have been a number of Australian players today annoyed at the means of their dismissals. Cameron Green, number 1. Alex Carey, number 2, straight to leg slip. Even Usman Khawaja missing a full ball that he might on another day have just got to on the full. Those things set Australia back in places, but Steve Smith was always there cajoling his partner at the other end. He was doing a bit of umpiring. He was doing a little bit of
Bit of roly-poly on the ground
work.
too.
He was doing a little bit of instruction. I think it was to Bryden Cass about his sonnies. So you got the full Steve Smith today. But the fact that he's made 100 there to really kind of put England away, that will be something that he'll be happy with, and he'll want more runs tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. You mentioned Cameron Green. Did feel like he left runs out there, and Bo Webster's certainly going on with it at the moment. But one question to finish, Dan, he's looking ahead to tomorrow as well. England bowled 23 overs of spin in this innings out in the field. That's about a third, or just under a third, of what they've bowled across this entire series. How much do you think spin is going to play a role, or in this case for the Aussies, when they are back out in the field, should have played a role?
Well, the interesting thing about today in terms of spin wasn't so much the number of overs bowled, but the fact that Jacob Bethel in particular, and a little bit Will Jackson, but mainly Jacob Bethel, were bowling spinning deliveries that were going through the top of the surface. On day 3 at the SCG, that's something that we have seen in the past on sort of classic SCG wickets. We know that the Australian team, Brains Trust, don't think that spin is a huge factor here anymore, and that's why they picked the team that they picked. But if you look at those dismissals, obviously Nathan Lyon is injured, but you'd be wanting to get something change out of your spinners. Now, the one guy I'd be looking at now would be Marnus Labuschagne. He bowled seam up in the first innings. If I'm the Australian team, and certainly Steve Smith, I'll be telling him, get in the nets, practice your leggies, because we might need them to close out this game.
That is going to be a very interesting watch for tomorrow, day 4 of this 5th and final Ashes Test match. And as always, we will be back here tomorrow to review all of the action.